A new report says Dino Babers might have a lot more job security than you think. It's a Locked On Thursday. Let's get after it.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening. Matt Bonaparte, I'm Owen Valentine. Thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Find us, watch us. Thank you for being here. Happy Thursday. A lot to go over today. We feel like we've almost been struggling a little bit to find bigger topics this week, and we finally got something of a little bit more substance, a little more meat and potatoes here to discuss this Thursday morning. And it has to do with Coach Babers' job security, right? Everyone wants to talk about how he's on the hot seat, even if John Wildhack wants to claim that Babers isn't quite on the hot seat. But a report today, per Pete Thamel, Dino Babers, if he finishes this season, and I think when you hear this number, you will be aware that he most likely is finishing this season. Even if he finishes the 2022 campaign, he would be owed more than $10 million in his buyout. I think that says a lot. I think we thought maybe the last year's number, the end of last season, was that $10 million threshold, and this season might have been a little bit lower. But per Pete Thamel, this is a big number. 10 mil is going to be tough for Syracuse to buy anybody out and then pay another coach. And I think it gives Dino at least 2 more years of job security before the university can even consider things. So, Bones, is it time to pump the brakes on the critique of Dino and maybe just sit back and accept what's going on and become a Dino supporter, full on and full fledged, for the next 24 games or so?
No, because you could still critique him. That just because he's probably not getting canned doesn't mean you have to support him. And I think I'm probably a little bit higher on Dino than other people are, just because I don't know. I guess the situation is, for me, is like, if you fire him, you're probably going to be worse next year, and you're taking a gamble again. And I don't think Dino's a great coach. I think his clock management, we've seen it just be brutal. He hasn't been a great recruiter. He had one big win and one really good season, and he's done nothing else otherwise. I mean, it's clear that it was a little bit of a premature extension from John Wildhack, but just because he's probably not going anywhere in the next few seasons doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden become his biggest fan. I'm not saying he should be hated on unrelentlessly, but I'm also saying that there's no reason for everybody to just jump on the bandwagon just because he's not going anywhere.
I'm on the same page. I think, we still got to watch. It's tough to sit back and not have any sort of critical lens when you're looking at a team, especially a team that has struggled in recent years. And as you mentioned, Babers, 5 losing seasons in 6 years. He's got the 110 win anomaly and some pretty bad football surrounding that ordeal. So when you look, you can still have that critical lens, but I do think, hearing that number sort of solidifies for me. I thought there might have been a chance that depending on the start, depending on the season, that this could be the year that it would become available. If that, the wins or the losses presented themselves, that would be a possibility this season. Now hearing that, I think you're pretty much guaranteed this season, next season. And at that point, you might as well just let him finish out the contract. Because there's not all too much left. So it is interesting. And I think when you look at, the additions of 2 new first-year coaches and an offensive coordinator and Robert and I on a quarterbacks coach, Jason Beck, when you bring in more first-year guys like that, it would make it a lot harder for a regime change. And so I think those actions seem to legitimize this $10 million number even more. But it is something to
Oh, now he's back. That was crazy. Go ahead.
We're back. My first visit, we had this happen. Now I hope we stay sturdy the rest of the way. But I think you brought it up. It was definitely, in hindsight, right? In that moment, you've got USC knocking on Babers' door, right? You're going to give the extension to please a fan base that is, incredibly ecstatic with a 10-win season. And it is, in hindsight, obviously hindsight 2020, a premature decision. I think you can look and maybe you want to say that for Wildak, it was a more of an amateur, new to being an athletic director at a big school or an athletic director in general. It's an early decision, a bit of a jump to give the amount of money and the extension they gave. But it is something that happened, something that you're going to deal with. And when you're a school like Syracuse and you gamble like that and pay a coach, more than Syracuse has been paying coaches, it didn't pay off this time. But that does not mean that I think you have to stop spending. So I hope that this is not the Syracuse athletic department discourager for spending money on coaches and coaching staffs moving forward, because I think there are a lot more benefits for it in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to gauge the relationship that Wildhack has with Dino. I think a lot of people would jump out right away and say, he loves Dino. Of course he does. If he didn't, he'd fire him by now. Well, let's think about what actually happened. Dino had 2 4-8 seasons, one in which he beats Clemson. Some hype starts to build. He doesn't have a great roster. And anytime a coach is hired, you don't really judge him off his first few years. You judge him off the first few seasons in which he has his guys. So that's like the 3rd, 4th, 5th seasons. In his 3rd season at the helm, they go 10-3. And right there, Wildhack thinks he has something and thinks that Syracuse has its coach for the next some odd years. He doesn't waste any time. He has Dino sign the dotted line on for 6 more seasons, which at the time seemed like a good idea. And if you're going to sit there and think, oh, I didn't think it was a good idea, you're probably lying. Because a lot of people at that time, the conversations that people were having were, is Michigan going to buy this guy out? Is he going to go to Florida State? Where is Syracuse going to lose Dino Babers to? Which huge school? So don't try to sit there and act like you knew when John Wildhack didn't. Because Dino did have a great season, and it made him look like he was fantastic, and everybody loved the guy until the next season where he goes 5-7. Okay, letdown year. Tommy DeVito wasn't as advertised. They'll get better next year. 2020 happens, 1-10 year, and everything's down the chute. And everybody jumps off the Dino bandwagon. The next season, last year, another 5-7 year, which somehow, even though a 4-win uptick in which they were in a year where they were predicted to only have like 3 wins, people still disappointed with a 5-win season where technically they overachieve and it's still a pretty bad year. Now, I understand why people didn't want him after last year. I mean, he hasn't been what everybody thought he was going to be. But at the same time, you can't really knock Wildhack because it looked like the right decision at the time to sign him to that extension. In hindsight, and hindsight's 2020, of course, he jumped the gun. But I don't think you can jump down his throat for doing what he did.
No, I don't think it's worth jumping down his throat, but I do think this is something that you can look at him with. And when you hear, Wildhack say, oh, he's not on the hot seat, that's not necessarily a reflection of, his ideas as to how Babers is doing as a coach. That's more of the, we gave him the extension. We gave him this much. The buyout after this season, in theory, per this article, is $10 million after the 2022 year. At that point, you sort of have to accept what you've done, put your hand up, say, this is where we are. This is what's happening. This is the situation that we're going to have until we can afford a buyout or until things get better.
You're going to ride this out.
And you sort of have to stand with it. You got to go down with your ship almost. If you're John Wildhack, you got to support it. You got to roll with it. And that's sort of the point where he's at. So I don't think, going back to that, like when you see, oh, he's not in the hot seat by any means. I don't think that's indicative of anything in terms of Wildhack's thoughts on Babers as a coach, as a member of the Syracuse athletic community. I don't think it really reflects anything as much as it's his job. And at this point in his job, he can't really do anything to improve upon that area besides paying coaches. And he started to pay some assistant coaches to bring in, some better coordinators to surround Babers, which hopefully, and what I've heard from Robert and I, or heard about Robert and I, is that's working. And you saw last year with Tony White, things are starting to work out on this coordinator aspect. So they're trying to bring money in elsewhere So it's a little bit cheaper than buying out a coach and bringing in another coaching staff to begin with. So I'm okay with sort of the saves that they've gone to make in this one. And so I'll roll with that. Bones, I think you got something to say in terms of what our ads are for the day.
Yeah, let me read you an ad, and after it, we will continue to give you the latest updates on Syracuse athletics. But for now, let me tell you about Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right, Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. They've got a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All of the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of preparing it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself like Owen does. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture, so good. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're gonna love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar and tastes better than candy bars. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15. Bang.
Of course, I would hide that. It sounds delicious. Cookie dough covered in chocolate. Fine, I'll hide it. I'll stash it for myself. I don't need to share that. Sounds unreal. What would I do? That sounds good. More good news, I guess. We had yesterday's what possibly could happen episode in terms of Jihad Carter in a scary situation in practice yesterday or 2 days ago at this point when you're listening. And him getting, having to leave in an ambulance, and the quote from Babers about all of his limbs working and him being able to move all of his extremities. Good news today at practice. Yes, he's in street clothes, but good to see him there. Reports I saw said he was messing around with people, joking around, having a good time. So we did go over. Now, God forbid something does happen. You will know what happens if Jihad Carter's out. And that can kind of be, placed in for a couple of other guys in the secondary, in the DNs or the D-backs here.
There he goes again. Buddy's back.
We're back. I don't know what's happening. Little half-second cutout. For today, Jihad Carter's back. So we pressed the panic button for a little bit yesterday. As we mentioned, we weren't sure. We said it could just be a 1-2 day thing and he's back in practice, or it could be something a little bit more. Fortunately, it just seems to be a quick little thing, and good to see him back at practice, even if it is just in street clothes for the day.
Totally. We talked about how important he is, and his health obviously more paramount than that. So, Jihad, good to see you back, friend.
Yeah, I'm sold. 100-plus tackles in his career so far, year 3 guy. I'm excited to see him back. We continue, you look at Syracuse football, you look at camp today, you're seeing a little bit more reports starting to come out, starting to see some things. I heard Garrett Schrader talking today about some of the new ideas that are happening and things like that. I think he mentioned today in an interview that if it was up to him, he would pass the ball every time, but they have a decent running back that has to contribute as well. So Sean Tucker's in the mix as well. I like Garrett Schrader right now, but we got to talk something else that's pretty big in terms of Syracuse athletics as a whole right now. And it's sort of the announcing, the Donna DeToda said this morning, of the 315 Foundation, which is basically the equivalent of a Syracuse Collective, right? You've started to see these collectives popping up around the college athletic landscape with the NIL situation and being able to sort of provide players payments and salaries in some cases almost from an outside source, right? These are detached from the athletic department, although they might be attached, in principle, they're not directly associated by any means. You've seen these in, getting teams incredibly high amounts of money and players, huge salaries. And you've also seen them at lesser extents. And I think I'm interested to see how this works for Syracuse and where the money goes for Syracuse. I do like the idea in this one that it's going to be sort of contributed to community service. These are a 501c, I think, or 501b. I forget what phrase it is, but whatever the nonprofit one is. This is that sort of organization. So it's going to be really associated with getting players out into the community a little bit, whether that be, running a clinic or going to a school and talking to students and talking to kids or young players in that sport. I think it's really cool that they've sort of got that caveat linked to this money, and obviously the players will get paid afterwards. But I do like that it'll bring kids or these players out in the community and start to really, build up upon Syracuse athletics.
Totally. And Boeheim went on Q Sports Talk to promote it, and he basically phrased it and pitched it as fans being able to contribute to recruiting now. So there's that aspect of it as well, to where I will say he ranted about there having been talk of the facilities aren't good and they don't pay enough money. And he is right about that. People talk about that plenty, about how Syracuse is such a big program, but their facilities aren't good enough. So there is some merit to what he's saying in terms of going out there, and now there's a chance to change something. So if you want to, go ahead. I think it's really good that this is happening because, like you said, a nonprofit always is good, and going out to talk to schools and all that kind of thing. I love anything that helps the community, and this is something that does. So it's good to see Syracuse athletics giving back to the community that loves it so boldly.
I think that's incredibly true. And it makes, donating easier in the fact that it would be a tax deductible donation. And it makes, things a little bit easier to start collecting money. On that interview as well with Boeheim, I know he was talking about how it's going to be important for, yes, these bigger organizations and these big people to donate, but it's also going to be, important for the everyday fan to be able to contribute, right? If you have, 50 people donate $50, it's $2,500 that you can give to a player or give to a few players. And that makes a difference. And you're going to start to see this become a bigger and bigger and bigger element and factor in the recruiting process, right? As this becomes a more mainstream thing, and for players to be getting almost guaranteed money, especially in, your for-profit sports, your football, your basketball, maybe the occasional lacrosse, primarily. Obviously, it'll be in other sports. But when you look at, Arch Manning, not to throw him out, but you look at that whole recruiting process and how much money is being involved there, this is starting to become a really, really big thing. And you look at the amount of money that it'll take to bring players in. So this is a really good initiative for Syracuse, and I think it helps to bring Syracuse players in the future. And so, as Boeheim said, right, it's a bit of a chance for you to put your money where your mouth is, right? If you can make a difference in recruiting, here's your chance to make a difference in recruiting by throwing some cash out there and helping to compensate some of these players, and by bringing them out in the community and going to other, nonprofit organizations and holding events there. It's really just going to sort of create this nice little boost for everybody involved, which I think is really, really the best aspect of this as a whole.
Also, there's the lens, the point of view of recruiting within the entire thing, in that, the SEC schools and all the schools down south and out west, it just seems like their NIL opportunities are better. So Syracuse kind of able to put itself in the position to catch up with them in a way that avoids any kind of tampering. I think it's also really good in that respect. So hopefully it works out, and it's as good as we all think it is going to be right now. Because Syracuse recruiting, at least on the basketball end of things, is on the up and up. And this should pretty much only help it. So I think Boeheim and the rest of those who are at the forefront of this initiative are doing exactly what they need to be right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll help Babers. I think it can go out and, help other sports as well. I think this is a fun, thing for Syracuse to have. And yes, you're probably going to see it mainly in football and basketball, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be lacrosse athletes, volleyball, whatever sport you can name. These student athletes will be able to benefit from this as well, right? When you're, I don't know, a high school volleyball player, you're always wanting to, get better, do things like that. And now it gives a chance for, these players, the women's volleyball team at Syracuse to have a couple of players on a weekend, do a clinic or something, make some money, help out, local volleyball teams, local volleyball players to get better. I think that's going to really help as a whole too. And I love the fact that this is seemingly, and it seems like they really did keep this in the back of their mind when it went through the process of creating the 315 Foundation. They really did seem to have the community in mind in a lot of these decisions. And I think that's going to go a long way for the overall benefits of this, outside of the fact that, players are going to end up with some cash in their pocket.
Absolutely. So yeah, overall, a very good thing for all Syracuse athletics. Not only that, the huge revenue sports, but also everything everywhere. So pretty good stuff from Syracuse. On the docket otherwise, Syracuse training camp still rages on. And tomorrow we have a very exciting interview coming up. Stephen Bailey, formerly of Syracuse.com, now at 24/7 Sports, will be joining us. Someone for me, Owen, who I always looked at and was very impressed by his reporting as a student, and still am as an alum. So I'm excited to have him on the show. I know you are as well. But that's it.
Let me
today.
give him a shout too.
Oh,
Let me give him a shout.
Sure,
right?
Man.
You liked his reporting. I liked his reporting too. All right. Let's not jump over on the top right now and make me look like I don't like the guy. Okay. Phenomenal reporting. Love to see it. And I got to give him my shouts too if I'm going to let you do it and make me look bad.
He's the man. He's the absolute man. So we're excited to have Stephen on tomorrow's episode. So stay tuned for that. He'll be giving us the ins and outs of what he's seen at SU football training camp. Until then, go get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen every day. Host Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you across the ACC in 30 minutes. That's Locked On ACC. And we'll be back tomorrow on Locked On Syracuse. See you then.